I never meant to fall for her. She was my friend's mom, calm, graceful, untouchable. But the night she smiled and whispered, "Don't tell him, you're my favorite secret," I realized some connections aren't meant to be explained, only felt. It had been 3 years since I'd last driven that winding road back to my hometown, the kind lined with tall sycamores that always seemed to whisper memories. The air felt thicker here, filled with the scent of dust, grass, and something familiar I couldn't quite name. My old friend, Daniel, had texted me that morning, "Come by tonight. Mom's cooking." I almost said no. But curiosity, or something softer, made me turn the car around. When I pulled up to their house, it looked the same. The white porch railings, the half-wilted flower beds. Only when the door opened did time really start to bend. It was her. Elena. Daniel's mother. She stood there in the doorway, sunlight spilling around her like a quiet halo. Her hair was pinned loosely, a few strands catching the light. She wasn't wearing makeup, she didn't need to. Her voice, when she spoke my name, was calm and warm, the kind of tone that makes you feel instantly known. "Look at you," she said, smiling. "You've grown up." The words shouldn't have hit me the way they did, but there was something about her gaze, steady, amused, a little proud, that stirred something deeper than nostalgia. Dinner was laughter and small stories, but my attention kept drifting toward her. The way she moved around the kitchen, graceful, certain. The way her hand brushed mine when she passed a bowl across the table. It wasn't intentional, but it left a faint warmth on my skin long after she pulled away. I caught her looking at me once, just for a moment, before she quickly looked back at her plate. There was nothing improper about it, yet it felt charged, like a pause that lingered too long. After dinner, Daniel went upstairs to take a call, and for the first time, it was just the two of us. The air felt still, like even the house was listening. She started gathering plates, and I stood to help. Our hands met again, lightly, but enough to make her glance up. For a second, neither of us spoke. Her eyes held mine, soft but unreadable. Then she smiled, that gentle, practiced smile of someone who knows how to hide what they feel, and said, "You've always been so thoughtful." I didn't know what to say. I only knew that the warmth from her touch stayed with me long after I left that night, like the scent of jasmine that hung faintly in the air, refusing to fade. That was the first night I realized coming home would feel different this time. The next morning, the sunlight crept in slow and golden through the guest room curtains. I hadn't meant to stay the night, but after a few drinks and Daniel insisting I crash on the couch, it just felt easier. The house was quiet now, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel amplified. Somewhere, a kettle whistled softly. When I stepped outside, the porch was washed in that early morning calm. The air smelled faintly of rain and coffee. And there she was, Elena, sitting in a wicker chair, legs tucked beneath her, hands wrapped around a mug. She looked peaceful, lost in thought. She noticed me and smiled, that soft, knowing kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "You're up early," she said, her voice low and a little rough from sleep. "I could say the same," I replied, trying to sound casual. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. "Sit. The morning's better with company." I took the seat. The wood creaked quietly beneath me. For a while, we just listened to the world waking up, the hum of insects, a dog barking somewhere down the street, the faint rustle of leaves. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. She asked about my life, my work, the city, if I'd found someone. I told her about long days, short weekends, and how nothing ever really felt like home. She listened closely, eyes fixed on me, her expression soft and genuine. Every now and then she'd tilt her head slightly, as if she could hear what I wasn't saying. When she laughed, it was quiet but full, the kind of sound that pulls you toward it. I don't even remember what joke I made, I just remember the way she reached out and touched my wrist lightly as she did. It wasn't much, just her fingertips resting there for a second, but it sent a gentle, unexpected warmth up my arm. Her hand lingered, then retreated, as if she, too, felt something shift. "Sorry," she murmured, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Old habit. I'm too tactile sometimes." I shook my head, smiling. "Don't be. It's nice." For a moment, neither of us looked away. The breeze lifted the hem of her sweater, carrying the scent of her perfume, something floral, faint, and familiar. When Daniel finally came outside, calling my name, she turned her gaze back to her coffee, the faintest hint of color rising in her cheeks. And that was the first morning I realized that silence could say more than words ever could. I started dropping by more often. At first, it was innocent, a quick hello, a borrowed tool, helping Daniel fix a few things around the house. But soon, I found reasons to stay longer. A loose hinge on the back gate. A flickering porch light. Anything that gave me an excuse to be near her again. Elena never questioned it. She'd tease me sometimes, "You're spoiling us, you know." But her eyes always softened when she said it. I told myself it was just gratitude, but the way she lingered in the doorway when I left made it feel like something more. One evening, Daniel was called into work unexpectedly, leaving me and Elena alone. The sky was deep orange, the last light of day fading through the kitchen window. She was cooking, not the elaborate kind of meal she'd make for guests, but something simple and comforting. Garlic, olive oil, a faint hint of rosemary. "Stay for dinner," she said. "I'll make too much anyway." I did. We talked about everything, how time changes people, how quiet the house feels once your children grow up and start living their own lives. Her words carried a hint of loneliness, wrapped in calm acceptance. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I could do was listen. After dinner, we stood side by side, washing dishes. The small, rhythmic sounds, water running, plates clinking, made the silence feel almost intimate. When we both reached for the same dish, our hands met. Just skin against skin, brief, but enough. Her fingers brushed over mine, light as air, and for a moment neither of us moved. I felt her breath catch, the air thick with something unsaid. She was the first to pull back. "Sorry," she whispered, voice barely audible over the running water. "It's okay," I said softly, though my pulse was unsteady. She gave a small, careful smile, one corner of her mouth curving as if to say we shouldn't, but we both feel it. We finished cleaning in silence. Outside, the night had deepened, the sound of crickets filling the air. She walked me to the door, her shoulder brushing lightly against mine. "Drive safe," she murmured. "Always," I said. But I didn't move right away. I stood there, half hoping she'd say something more. She didn't. Only that gentle, unreadable smile, the kind that made me want to stay just a little longer, even when I knew I shouldn't. It had been one of those heavy summer days, too hot, too still. The kind of heat that clings to your skin and makes even the air feel restless. I'd come by to drop off some tools I'd borrowed, planning to leave right away. But the sky had other plans. By the time I reached the porch, the clouds had broken open. Rain fell in sheets, pounding against the roof, soaking the driveway in seconds. "You're not driving in that," Elena said, appearing behind the screen door with a towel in her hand. "Come inside before you melt." I stepped in, water dripping from my hair. She handed me the towel, laughing softly. "You always get caught in storms, don't you?" Her tone was teasing, but there was something in her eyes, something softer, like she was glad I'd come. The storm rolled on, thunder echoing somewhere beyond the hills. We ended up sitting near the window, watching the rain blur the world outside. The house felt small and quiet, as if the storm had pressed everything closer together. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was warm, shared. She rested her elbow on the arm of the couch, chin against her hand, looking out the window with that faraway expression. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked. "When the house was full? When Daniel was younger?" She smiled faintly, eyes still on the rain. Every day. But missing something doesn't mean you want it back. Sometimes you just carry it differently. Her words hung there, soft and heavy. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She turned to me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a kind of tiredness behind her calm. It's strange, she said quietly. You spend years taking care of everyone else, and one day you realize you forgot how to let anyone take care of you. Something in me ached at that. Without thinking, I reached out and took her hand. It was a simple, human thing, fingers slipping between hers, a silent "I understand." She didn't pull away. The thunder rumbled again, softer this time. Her thumb moved once against my palm, hesitant, searching. When she looked at me, her eyes shimmered with that quiet vulnerability she usually kept hidden. "Thank you," she whispered. The rain kept falling, steady and unending, and for the first time, it felt like the world had stopped rushing past us. Like maybe, just for that hour, neither of us had to be alone. After that storm, something shifted between us. It wasn't something either of us mentioned, but it lived quietly in the spaces where words didn't reach. The next few days felt different, lighter, maybe, but also more delicate. Every glance, every pause seemed to carry more meaning than it should have. I still came by to help around the house, but now there was an awareness between us. When our hands brushed, she no longer pulled away immediately. When we spoke, her eyes held mine a moment longer, searching, testing the edge of something we both feared to name. One evening, Daniel called to say he'd be working late. The air outside was warm and still, the kind of evening that feels half-dream. Elena asked if I wanted to join her for a walk before it got dark. We followed the narrow path that wound behind her garden, the scent of lavender and damp soil rising with each step. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, and the hum of cicadas filled the quiet between us. She told me about her younger days, how she used to paint, how she'd stopped after Daniel was born. Life just took up all the space, she said with a soft laugh. I kept waiting for the right time to start again. I looked at her, silhouetted in the fading light, and said, maybe the right time isn't something that shows up. Maybe it's something you choose. She smiled, but there was a sadness in it. You say that like you've already learned it the hard way. Maybe I have, I admitted. For a while, we walked in silence. Our arms brushed now and then, and each time, neither of us moved away. By the time we reached the gate at the end of the path, the light had dimmed, the world around us glowing faintly blue. She stopped there, facing me. The distance between us was barely a breath. I could hear her inhale softly, see the rise and fall of her shoulders. You know, she whispered, eyes downcast, people wouldn't understand. I know, I said quietly. That's why I haven't said anything. She lifted her gaze then, steady, searching. Her hand came up, resting lightly on my chest, her palm warm against the fabric of my shirt. For a heartbeat, we just stood there. Her eyes softened, her lips parting as if to speak, but she didn't. Instead, she gave a faint, trembling smile, the kind that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. Then she stepped back, her hand falling away. "Good night," she murmured. And though the word was simple, it carried the weight of everything we hadn't said. The following weekend, Daniel mentioned he'd be out of town visiting friends. He said it casually, over the phone, but the moment I hung up, my pulse quickened. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that I might stop by to return a book, maybe share a meal, nothing more. But deep down, I knew the truth, I just wanted to see her. When I arrived, the house was quiet. The front door was slightly open, and the soft glow of kitchen light spilled into the hallway. She was standing by the counter, music playing low from an old radio, some timeless melody, the kind that fills a room without asking for attention. "You came," she said, smiling faintly. "You invited me," I replied, though we both knew I would have come even if she hadn't. Dinner was simple, roasted vegetables, pasta, wine. The kind of meal that feels like comfort wrapped in familiarity. We laughed easily, but beneath it, something hummed, a slow, steady rhythm neither of us acknowledged. Every time our hands passed a plate or a glass, our fingers brushed. Every time our eyes met, we looked away too quickly. When the dishes were done, she poured us both another glass of wine and leaned against the counter. The music had slowed, the kind of song that makes silence feel heavy and alive. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "how people end up in each other's lives, at the wrong time?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, the way the light touched her face, the curve of her smile trying to hide something fragile. "I don't think there's a wrong time," I finally said. "Just the moments we don't expect." Her eyes met mine then, and for a second, the world felt unbearably still. She stepped closer, slow, deliberate. I could smell her perfume, faintly floral, the same scent that had followed me for weeks. "Don't tell him," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "You're my favorite secret." My heart stilled. She smiled, small and trembling, and reached up, her fingertips brushing my cheek. The touch was light, careful, but it felt like the air had caught fire between us. Then she rested her forehead against mine, her breath warm, steady. Neither of us moved. The clock ticked softly in the background. Outside, the world went on, unaware that something quiet, impossible, and beautiful was unfolding right there in that dimly lit kitchen. When she finally stepped back, her hand lingered for a heartbeat against my chest before falling away. "Good night," she murmured. But this time, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a secret that would never stop echoing. I left town the following week. It wasn't because of her, not really. I'd always planned to go back to the city eventually, to return to work, to keep life moving forward. But as I packed, every sound in that house, the quiet hum of the fridge, the creak of the porch boards, felt heavier, like they knew something I didn't want to admit. Elena didn't say much when I told her I was leaving. She just nodded slowly, her eyes distant but kind. "You've got your own life to live," she said, and though her tone was gentle, there was something inside it, a quiet ache, hidden beneath all that calm. We didn't speak of that night. Not the words she'd whispered, not the touch that still lived like a warmth I couldn't shake. It felt safer that way, to leave it unspoken, to let it live somewhere between memory and silence. On my last evening, I stopped by to say goodbye. The sun was setting, soft gold spilling through the windows. She was in the garden, pruning roses. I watched her for a moment before speaking. "You'll miss your train," she said, without turning. "I know," I replied. "I wanted to see you first." She set the shears down and faced me. The look in her eyes, steady, unguarded, made it hard to breathe. I stepped closer, close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume, to see the tiny lines at the corners of her smile. "You don't have to say anything," she said softly. "Some things are better kept where they belong, in the heart." I nodded. My throat tightened as I reached out, brushing a stray leaf from her shoulder. My hand lingered there, just for a second longer than it should have. She placed her hand over mine, warm, sure, familiar. "Be good to yourself," she whispered. "And remember, some connections don't fade. They just change shape." There was nothing more to say. I pulled her gently into an embrace. Her arms slid around me, slow and certain. I felt her exhale against my chest, a quiet, steady release. For a moment, everything felt still again, like that stormy afternoon, like time itself had paused to let us hold on just a little longer. When I finally let go, she smiled, soft, bittersweet. "Go," she said, voice barely above a breath. "Before I ask you to stay." Months later, her message arrived. Just a few words: "I hope you're happy. I still make your kind of coffee." I read it twice, smiled, and closed my eyes. Because some goodbyes don't end anything, they just teach you how to carry someone quietly, forever. Headphone. If this story touched you, if you've ever loved someone you couldn't keep, but never forgot, don't leave just yet. Leave a rose in the comments to let me know you were here, and subscribe for more slow burn love stories that stay long after the words fade.